All right, so we do a lot of work in that sector. But when we actually say, well, okay, well, how much of that do we actually create patents for? How much of that research goes into the patent stage? The first major issue we have is on what we call these triadic patents, which are patents usually going to 3 different jurisdictions, the USA, Japan, Europe. All right? We created in 2008 288 of those patents. The USA in the same period created 28,000. All right, now USA's okay, about 15 times bigger than we are, but the numbers are literally 2 magnitudes different. So they're actually doing a lot more than we are when it comes to the patent area. The other critical factor, now I won't go through the sums with you, but the other one is how much of that technology, which is developed at universities and by industry, how much of that becomes commercial at the end of the day. And the sad statistics there are that for every 100 research projects, only 1 becomes commercial. And I think that's the really sad thing about what we've been doing in this country, is we've ended up in a situation where we've done a lot of work in R&D, a lot of good work's been done there, but we haven't really gone through the whole process of commercialising it. And there's a few reasons why that's happened. This, and again, another one of my charts, which I tend to use a lot, but this is the process for a company, if you can imagine that. So you've got from start-up going all the way through to major growth. There's a bit in the middle where it's essential where companies need to get some funding or some help. And what's tending to happen probably over the last 5 to 10 years in Australia in particular is that there's been a gap has happened. This is often referred to as the valley of death, as they call it. Now, on this picture here, in the older days, you'd get angel investors which would put money in, but because of the GFC, they've actually retreated a wee bit. And on the other side, the VCs would pop in about that time and actually fund. They haven't done that so much over the last few years, and the main reason they haven't done that, in my view, is because many VCs I know are making returns which are quite small. They're making maybe 12 or 15% or less per annum. And they've seen their friends who are private equity firms making 40 and 50% returns on their investments. And as a result of that, most VCs want to become private equity firms. So what's actually happened, it's actually moved this barrier up here, which actually has meant we've ended up with a lot less venture capital, money available to actually help fund these companies. The other side of the equation here is about skill sets. So the first issue with commercialisation is about money. It's about how do I get the money to do what I'm trying to do. The other one really is about having got the money, where do I get the skills from to actually help me commercialise. I've done these 2 slides. There's 2 slides here which relate to each other, but I think the important thing about these ones is just trying to demonstrate the complexity of commercialisation. I don't think people understand how complex it is. Many people believe it's just like an ordinary project plan. Anyone can do this. The answer is they can't. It is quite hard, it is quite difficult, and I think hopefully this will demonstrate. What I've actually got here are the 6 major areas, I call it. Development is the top one, which is in green, on the next slide. Then we're looking at the demand, which is what does the customer actually need, what does he want, what's his need in the marketplace. So that's the demand. How you go to market is distribution. How the organisation, your company, is organised to actually get the benefits out of this. What planning do I do and how do I get the funding? Now, those are what I think are the 6 key things. And when you put them all together, you end up with a chart which looks like this. All right? It's quite complex. And you've got to go through it almost sequentially. As you go through it sequentially, you can see that some things you've got to do. And there's a classic one up here, which I think is pricing strategy. So many companies forget to do that. And they end up with this great product, they think, at the end of the day, but what they haven't thought about is they've got to think about all the margins that other people have to put onto it along the way, and suddenly they find out if the difference between the cost and the sale price is 6, 7, 10 to 1. Massive variances. And they've got to do that because everyone wants a slice of the action all the way along the way. They don't think about that. They think that if they've got this cost which is half the price of something else in the marketplace, that would be great news, they can sell it. The answer is they probably won't, because by the time they take it to market, it'll be too expensive. I'll talk about CA now, because I think this is where CA, I think, started off. Commercialisation in Australia was started up 2.5 years ago. And it was identified, I think this is very visionary, all right? It identified that the need in the marketplace wasn't just for money, it's for expertise as well. And I think this was one of the first I found, I think it is the only program I'm aware of anywhere in the world which actually offers both funding and technical, no, not technical, but process, if you like, or commercialisation expertise. It's really quite unique. So we got the money, I got $278 million over 5 years, and it's $80 million after, I think, after 2014. So that's how much money we're pumping into this system. But the real objective here is to actually get a case manager, someone like me. And I said, you saw my details earlier, but we've actually got 26 guys just like me in Commercialisation Australia. We've got 26 people who've come out of industry, who've actually done their things, getting a bit old or whatever, but we've got some good experiences, and they want to now put those back into the budding entrepreneurs in the marketplace, and that's what we're here to do. So the CA program was designed to do that. It's designed to provide funding, and it's designed to provide expertise in order to do this job. So how we see it is the participant, which is a person who actually receives a grant from us. We provide the funding to do that, up to $2 million. So it can be quite a lot of money, but it's got to be matched with other funding from elsewhere. The case manager provides a huge amount of expertise in how to commercialise. And then beyond that, we also have a group of people which we call volunteer business mentors or mentors, who are people who've been in the market before. People who have actually been there and had a successful company. They don't want to become case managers, but they want to help again. And I think we've now got a network of about 140 people around the world which have got that sort of expertise. Some are very highly technical, have been there technically and can actually provide advice on technical issues, but the majority of business people who've actually been there, done it, formed companies, been successful, made hopefully a lot of money along the ways, and now want to give back. This is the grant structure. I won't go through it in detail. If you want to talk about this, I can do it elsewhere, because I don't think it's relevant. I'm just trying to illustrate this is the structure as it is. I'm around all day today, so if you want to chat about the grant. But there's 4 different areas. The key one really is the last one, which is what we call the early stage commercialisation grant, which is a up to $2 million of grant, which is really a $4 million project, because you've got to provide half the funding. And the bottom end of the market one is actually the skills and knowledge, which is just providing enough ability to help you get your concept underway, maybe write an information memorandum, which is for the investment community, or a go-to-market strategy or whatever. Right, the case managers mentioned before, there's 26 of us around the marketplace, around Australia. There's 8 in New South Wales and ACT. 3 of us look after ACT. I know I'm one of the guys down here that comes down occasionally. There's 2 others as well. One's a specialist in biotech. The other one is more ICT and energy. So we tend to break up our skill sets because of our backgrounds. We actually work very closely with all the participants. And we work as a mentor, we work as an unpaid advisor, whatever you want to call it. We work as almost like a non-exec director, but I do stress it is non-executive. We don't do anything related to where the executive requires to go in terms of the company, but we provide advice, if you like, as best we can. And we'll actually use our networks to help other people with what they're doing. We don't charge, and we get paid by the government, which is very kind of them, thank you much indeed, which is nice, and it's very collegiate, so we actually work very much together. So for 26 guys, plus the volunteer business mentors, creates an enormous amount of people and an enormous amount of connection. For example, just to give you a quick example, I've got 600, not quite 6,000, which it was. I've got 600 connections in the VC space around the world. All right, a lot of those overseas. So a lot of them are in Europe or in North America and in the UK. But I've got, around 600. I mentioned before, the VBMs, equally very important as part of the equation, very important part of what we're trying to achieve as part of the network. And we actually access those as we require for different companies. And I've got one now working with a healthcare company down in Wagga Wagga. And I've actually got a VBM working down there with them to try to take their product to market. We've managed to get their product into Woolworths, we've got it into a few other suppliers around the countryside. They're starting to move quite well. Another product which some of you may have heard of was 365 Cups, which was on 60 Minutes the other week. They've actually now got, I think it's 9,000 customers around Australia. We're helping them trying to extend their client base with what they're doing in terms of online coffee ordering. Interesting. All right, this is where we are today. We've got 303 companies we're supporting today, or participants. About $120 million worth of funding has gone out the door. In the ACT and New South Wales region, 91 companies, 91 participants I should say, because they might be people, but 91 participants we've got now in that area. So we've got very good coverage across the countryside. Which sectors they're going to? Well, the biggest one today is still the health and medical sector. That's still our largest one. But we're very active now in energy. Agriculture has been growing, business and communications. A lot of stuff is in software, as you would expect, as well. Right, some key messages, which is really, this is my final slide, I hear now. Very good at R&D. Australia's brilliant at R&D. No issues with R&D at all. We invent a lot, all right, but we don't always protect it well, as I mentioned before. Our ability to patent is not always good, particularly in terms of getting good coverage around the world. But I think it's very expensive. I think that's why a lot of people don't do it. Innovation is really about how you apply an invention, not just the process itself. It's very much part of the commercialisation strategy, not really part of the invention strategy as well. So innovation is really part of that latter stage of the process. It's extremely complex and I think greatly underestimated, so be aware of that. So when you go down this pathway of looking at commercialisation, it's not like running a project plan, it's like running 10 project plans in parallel and they're all interconnected. That's what it's really about. It's quite complex. I mentioned before, we don't commercialise very well here. We haven't done in the past. Hopefully we can do better in the future. Only about 1% is actually ever successful in Australia. All right, and I think the key one for us is that we know commercialisation in Australia was formed to provide, if like, that gap, or to help erode that gap we had in funding and in expertise. And that's why we were formed.